early in my career. This is a long time ago, but it could happen in today's world where this kid had joined the company. He had been there for 6 months. He came right out of school, knew nothing. I mean, how much does anyone really know right out of school, right? And he joined. He had been there for 6 months, and we went through a promotion cycle. And I literally got a phone call from his mother. His mother called me and said, "I can't believe you didn't promote my son, so-and-so."
Stop it.
And I said, probably, like, this will haunt me till I die, because it was probably the most unprofessional thing I ever said. But I said, the fact that his mommy is calling me is probably one of the indications as to why he did not get promoted.
Hi, folks. I have a real treat for you today. I get to speak with Christina Luconi, the former chief people officer of a bunch of companies, including Rapid7, longtime startup people person, and honestly, just like a real treat because she keeps it aggressively real. She drops a story about someone's mom calling her. It is just wild. Strongly recommend you give this one a listen. Well, I've got your attention. Melanie and I work for this company, Athena. We do compliance training as well as a bunch of other HR and legal tools that help companies to build their compliance programs in a way that really supports their culture. Please do have your HR, legal, or compliance teams check Athena out. Thank you. I'm joined by Christina Luconi. I hope I said your last name right as a part Italian. Okay. And I met you at a panel a couple of years ago and instantly gravitated towards you. I was like a little bit pregnant. I don't know if you remember this. And I was like kind of a mess. And yeah.
You were not a mess, but I remember the pregnant.
Just, I think you like cursed on the panel, which is always a way to my heart, dropped a bomb or something. And I just felt like you were really real, both about like being honest and then also about like being in a business. Like I feel like sometimes the HR stuff from my, bad CEO perspective can seem a little like woo-woo. And it's like, okay, but I'm like trying to run a business and you seem to like toe that line. So I was just really interested in being friends. And so I've just like bothered you since then. But your professional background is very helpful. Is you were a chief people officer for a long time, including at Rapid7, a great Boston-based tech company. And then you are now the founder of People Innovations, where you're scaling great people practices to startups because you're a self-described startup junkie. You, I would say, from my perspective, share pretty like candidly. You've talked about your cancer diagnosis and journey and like all of that. You just kind of strike me as someone who like kind of like who you are and who you present are very similar, almost overlapping. One is like, would you say that's right? And then I'm just curious if that's like changed over time.
Yes, I think it's right. And I think, that old adage, like with age comes wisdom. I feel like I've become very wise because I'm getting old. But I think there was a significant moment where it changed for me about 12 years ago. So I'll just lead off by totally oversharing. I went on my first date, post-divorce date, which was an epic fail. My friends clearly hate me for the guy they set me up with, but
I have a friend like that. It was just like, it was like, is this a troll?
Yeah,
like,
come on now.
Yeah,
like,
so yeah.
But you really don't know me. But there's actually a point to this. So he was actually a writer, and I was like, you're not going to date this guy, but at least you can have an interesting conversation with another human. So toughed it out. But at the end of the night, he had said, you should keep a journal. And my immediate reaction was like, no way. Like I was the kid in high school who never passed a note because I didn't want anyone to see it and get caught with people like really knowing what I was truly thinking. And as somebody who's been in the people space forever, I've become really good. I can't even imagine how many thousands of people I've interviewed, for example, over the years. And I've become pretty skilled at getting people to talk about themselves. And I would always share enough about myself so people felt like they knew me, but not, I have to like totally open it all up because I found that people were much more interested in talking about themselves than talking about me.
Generally.
So that's the path I went down. But that night I drove home from that date and thought, why did I have such a visceral reaction to keeping a journal? And in that half an hour drive home, I thought to myself, well, I don't like being scared of things ever. So I decided not only would I keep a journal, but I was going to keep it publicly out in the open to hold myself accountable. And that very night, I literally set up a set of ground rules. I went public with it. And I said,
And were
I'm
you
going to,
working like in-house
oh,
at the
I
time?
was totally working. Like we were not public yet as a company, um, which probably I would have maybe thought twice about it before if we were. But it didn't occur to me that anyone would ever read this. It just occurred to me, if I'm going to be really authentic, like I'm going to write this thing like no one's reading it. But I mean, I talked about a lot of stuff. I talked about the difficulties of divorce. I talked about raising my two daughters in that environment. I talked about the stress of being a working parent. I talked about trying to date. I talked about my sex life. I mean, I talked about everything.
Did you intend for work friends to read it, or was it
I
more
didn't
like,
think anyone would read it. It was just literally like, talk about naive. Like, it never occurred to me anyone would read it. And by the time I wrote, I called 365 day experiment. And I wrote literally every night before I went to bed. So if I was like out for work or out with friends or whatever, and I got home at 1 o'clock in the morning, I was still posting before I went to bed. I was like holding myself so accountable to it. And at the end of that year, people were reading it in different countries. Like people were passing it to their friends and sharing it. My parents were reading it. So one of the rules I had is, you can read it, you can comment on it, but I'm not engaging with you on this.
mm,
So if you see me in the hall at work, don't ask me about it. You can read it.
got
I
it?
know you've read it if you liked it or whatever, but we're
Yeah.
not talking about it. So people seem to respect that. But it turned out to probably be the best thing I ever did in my life. I learned so much about myself during that year by writing. I think the biggest lesson learned was, if you are authentic, if you put your own self out there, it draws people in. So I think as a chief people officer, I was pretty good at bringing people in, but it went to a completely different level when I put myself out there.
If you had been starting out in your career, would you think something like that is like too much?
I think we live in this world right now of people trying to be known, right?
Yeah,
And I didn't do it to be known. I think I would rather focus on being interesting enough that people want to know me versus the end goal trying to be known, if that makes
sure.
sense, right?
Yeah, yeah, like being an influencer or
Yeah,
something
like I
versus
don't
just
get
like I'm really interested in this idea and I want to put it out
right,
there.
like I don't get the concept of influencer, honestly. Like clearly I sound like a dinosaur because that is like a legit job to people today.
I
But
mean,
for
it's like
me,
I
an
feel like I live in
influencer,
Williamsburg.
yeah, I mean, for me, an influencer is somebody who has done something significant that you actually pay attention and are influenced by them versus, somebody who I've never heard of before holding up a face cream that I'm supposed to buy because they tell me to. Like, I don't get that. But it but I'm in the minority. Obviously, that is a legit thing. Um, but I think, to get back to the original question of like putting yourself out there, and the level of authenticity, I find that we don't live in a very authentic world sometimes. There's a lot of people between the filters on the you can manipulate your picture, and you can
Sure.
um you know curate a perfect looking life on Instagram and whatever. And that doesn't like draw me in. I want to see people's whole life. I want to see the mess. I want to see the successes. I want to see the reality of it. And for those people that can communicate in that way, I find I am much more drawn to. I thrive when people bet against me. So,
I think I mostly do. I will say, like, not to make this the woe is me moment, but like, I think what's hard is sometimes like in venture, they do bet against you, right?
oh,
Like
sure.
2% of women, venture funding goes to like all women founding teams. And it's like, it's easier when there's money.
Yeah,
Like it's,
sure.
like, and so I think sometimes I forget what we were talking. Oh, Layla, who I love, who you would really love. I interviewed her for this podcast, Layla Saka. And she was like, you know what? She got advice early in her career, so curious about this. Basically, she needed to dress better. She was a Salesforce exec. She wanted to go to Davos and just like, keep getting promoted. She felt like she was hitting a ceiling. And one of her colleagues said, like, you got to dress better. You're like very tech and, whatever, like casual tech dresser, and you gotta like dress like an executive, which of course as a woman is very different than dress like an executive as a man, right? Like that
Yep.
does not mean you get to wear the same outfit every day. It means you have to wear makeup. It means your hair has to be a certain way. Like it's not the same. But and Layla's take was like, I'm glad he said something because I did dress better, and guess what? I got the promotion. And is that how the world should work? No, but it's how that world did work. And like, I'd
Sure.
rather get into the room and then be able to make my point than like never get in the room.
Absolutely. I mean, I will be really honest. For I'm I'm older at this point, but I joined my career. I've been in tech my entire career, and I was for a very long time the only woman in the room. And that was like that fueled me. I found my superpower in being the only woman in the room, but I still had to play by the rules I got the same dress better conversation, in my first job and whatever. And I'm glad for that. But I think then it comes to like, let me show you how good I am. Let me deliver. Let me be impactful. And then you finally get to the point where you're at my age and you're like, I'm playing by my own rules at this point. I have nothing left to prove to anyone. Now I'm just proving stuff to myself. So I do think you have to play the game for a bit.
There are a lot of talks, I feel like, especially in people forums, but like honestly, same with founders, you kind of hear it of like hustle culture versus like Gen Z boundaries and like work expectations. And like these just like collide. They collide in everything from like return to office mandates to, mental health in the workplace, what I can and can't share, what I can and can't wear. Like, I don't want to be even slacked after 5 p.m. Even that is triggering, schedule sent. Talk to me about like one, do you think some of this is overblown, or are you like, nah, I see it in like the people I'm working with and in being in the space too? Like, so maybe like question one is like, how real is this? Or is this just kind of like grumble, grumble, internet
No,
grumble?
it's hugely real. It's hugely real. Then the question is, what do you do about it? Something happened. I hate blaming the pandemic for anything, but there definitely something came out of that, right? So
Yeah.
for example, um, Rapid7 was growing hugely at that period of time. We hired a number of people during the pandemic. The average age of the company was probably around 30. But for a lot of people that we're hiring, they were literally just out of school. They're in their first or second job. And they started the world when the world was imploding and they were working from home. They were either at their parents' kitchen table or there was like four guys in South Boston sharing a tiny apartment competing for bandwidth. And and I think people came out of it. And number one, when companies start talking about like, let's go back to the office, the immediate response was, well, obviously I can work from home. I can be productive. Therefore, this is bullshit. Like I don't want to
Yeah.
be in the office. I think of it as the me versus we, and you need both, right? You have to create an environment at work where people can be their authentic selves and bring their best work to the table, right? I truly believe in inclusion. I'm not going to talk about diversity, but like inclusion where we're all unique souls, right? And we have to learn how to bring it all together to do
Yeah.
something impactful in the world, right? That's why the company exists. But some of that means it's not all about you and what works for you. It's about what works for us as well. So, for example, way before the pandemic, I remember like I was a single mom, am a single mom. My kids were younger, and I was commuting from the suburbs into the city every day. So I would leave every morning at 5:45 in the morning to beat traffic so I could get home at a normal time so I could feed my kids and be with them. That was our special time at night. And I wouldn't take my computer out and I would like really focus on being present for them at nighttime. And I had a woman on my team who had two really young kids who was in the, midst of trying to figure out how do I get them to daycare in the morning, whatever. And so I was in the office by 6:30 in the morning. She was in the office by 10:30 in the morning. And that was all like great. Okay, how do we make this work for us? So then we just decided, okay, you know what? Any meetings we schedule with each other are going to be between the hours of like 10 and 4. And that way both of us have our needs met, but we can really make sure that the bulk of our work we can do together. We can maximize that time. That was like a very healthy conversation, and we set really great boundaries that worked for everybody. But it was also because we were all willing to give a little bit. It wasn't just about I have to give up my life. No one thought about it that way. A conversation is really important, right? I have spoken to so many um, CEOs and founders of smaller companies that are trying to grow. And sort of, I grew up in startups. I've done a number of them. And you're right. Like in the early days, back when I started my career, like we literally used to sleep under our desk. And there was something like a badge of honor that you wore because, like, I can take it. I can take anything. Like, I don't think that's necessarily healthy either. But
But
I'm
it is
talking to a
sometimes
lot of
required at the early
it.
stages, you know, like
It is sometimes required. But I think there was this era of time where like startups were sexy. People wanted to say they were part of a startup. There's nothing sexy about it. It's grueling, it's hard work, and you have to it doesn't have to be your entire life, but it has to be a big chunk of your life to get that thing up and running. And it attracts a certain brand of crazy. And I say that with love, right? Like we're all wired a little, like to want to do that as a little, it's not a normal thing, but you have to attract like-minded people, right? Because I think if somebody thinks it's sexy or they're doing it because it's, I'm part of this hot new startup versus I'm willing to do what it takes. So I've talked to founders that are like, I'm struggling to hire great people because they're actually saying, so do you have a 4-day work week? Or do you have, do we have summer Fridays? Or do we have, and I don't mean to make it about the number of hours or the days that you work, but if that's what
that's
you're
kind of a
leading with,
proxy for, yeah.
right, that tells you who you're like, those aren't the people that are going to be grabbing a shovel and helping you get this thing going.
Yeah.
So I think you have to know yourself and know what you're into. And guess what? There's plenty of lifestyle companies at this point in time. Um, they're just not the ones that are probably going to attract the people that you. I think the goal for any founder at this point is how do you create an environment that feels like people can actually achieve the life they want to live, but also contribute maximum impact in your company. How do you build that? One of the things I really admire about you and Melanie um, is that, Corey, our CEO at Rapid 7, and I like shared the same thing to be in sync with the CEO, to know what they're trying to achieve from a business perspective. And then your job is to work backwards and figure out how to create the people strategy that supports the business strategy. That's like an incredible partnership to build. And it's very
Yeah.
rare. I know every chief people officer aspires to have that with their CEO, but I think we still live in a world where, for a lot of people, they're still trying to figure it out. So for me, it's more important like, if you get the seat, what are you doing with it? And how are you making maximum impact? So I've always sort of thought about this in terms of like, it is way better to be respected than liked. And if you can be both,
Yeah.
amazing. But I think that there's a lot of people leaders that are so focused on being liked. They get into it because I like people. And I don't mean to sell anyone short. I think that's great. I mean, obviously we're people. We want people to like us, but I think if you're in a senior people leadership role, you got to make tough decisions. You got to challenge the CEO about, I hear what you're saying. Let's explore this because I don't think people are going to rally around to this. So let's figure out a way to achieve your goals in a way that's actually going to speak to the general population. So you have to be, you have to be willing to have the hard conversations.
Yeah, I think like sometimes I wonder if like people leaders don't always understand that like I think CEOs have very contentious relationships with like all their leaders, right? Like I'm constantly being told by our VP of engineering that I didn't understand something or that I've got this wrong or this or that. And I value that because it's like I pay you a lot of money and you're really talented and I am not here to have you tell me that my dumb idea is a good idea because it's like
Right.
that's a bad
Sure.
idea.
Sure.
And so I think sometimes it's like, kind of a little bit misunderstood that like CEOs, in my experience, like among CEO peers, really value. There tend to be like strong ideas, loosely held people. So they're like, I think this is the best idea ever. And then if you come in with like 3 reasons why it's dumb, they're like, you're right. This new idea is the best idea ever. Like they're generally like somewhat willing to change their perspectives when they see different data because that's what building a company is. Like you have a perspective, a hypothesis, you ship it, customers tell you you're wrong and you adjust it. And so like I think sometimes that that people kind of like misunderstand that and think like being a yes person is the way in. And like interestingly, Melanie's not here, so I can talk about her. I would talk about her. She's here too. I feel like Melanie and I kind of hit our stride from a business perspective when she actually got to know the business more. So what I mean is
Sure.
like
Yes.
she realized like, hey, we often sell to HR at our like mid-market customers. Let me go like be a part of the marketing effort. Let me go like sit in some demos. And then let me tell like let me try to like see if I can do this and like let me give feedback to the product team and let me tell the marketing team why I think that these blog posts don't land and this webinar series is dumb. And then I was like, okay, you, that's kind of a unique situation because she can represent a buyer, but I don't think it has to be HR tech. I think you just have to have enough curiosity about like the
The
money comes from
business.
this core part of the business.
Yeah,
Yes.
you have to
And then
understand the business. Absolutely.
like, you know, yoga and summer Fridays and stuff are like not core parts of the business. And they, if they support the core part of the business, amazing. But like, if I feel like you kind of come in with your perspective on like, I don't know, our PTO policy should be X and you haven't understood the business, it's like really much harder for me to like have that trust.
I totally agree. I have so much respect for people that have the ability to connect with humans and understand and build those trusting relationships and understand the business.
It turns out businesses are, you know, like money making machines that you have
Yeah,
to,
yeah. Well, I think
like,
people
you
sometimes
know,
forget that, right? I mean,
totally.
I
Yeah.
think we live in a world, especially where we were talking about some of the folks that joined the workforce post pandemic or whatever. And that's where the me and we becomes really important. Like it's not all about you. It's not like you early in my career. This is a long time ago, but it could happen in today's world where this kid had joined the company. He had been there for 6 months. He came right out of school, knew nothing. I mean, how much does anyone really know right out of school, right? And he joined, he had been there for 6 months. And we went through a promotion cycle. And I literally got a phone call from his mother. His mother called me and said, I can't believe you didn't promote my son, so and so.
Stop it.
And I said, probably like, this will haunt me till I die, because it was probably the most unprofessional thing I ever said. But I said, the fact that his mommy is calling me is probably one of the indications as to why he did not get promoted, right? Like, but I'm
Christy,
like,
that's an
isn't that
unhinged story.
insane? And he quit pretty soon after. But I should probably check on him and see where his career went. But like I thought, oh my
And
God,
he
like
shows up in these LinkedIn comments. I
oh
love
my
these.
God, I know,
Oh, God.
me too. But I think like the thing that killed me about it was like, God, like you're 6 months in, you know nothing, you've contributed so little. Like, why do you think you should be promoted? And he's like, I worked really hard. Well, there's
How
a
does
big
mom
difference
even get your
between.
number? Like,
She
what
called the
is that?
front
Like,
desk to the company.
oh my God.
Um, so I find stuff like that fascinating because the level of entitlement, and I won't just say it's for, I know people like crap on millennials or Gen Zers or whatever. The entitlement is everywhere.
Totally. Yeah, yeah.
Right?
It's
I
not
mean,
like a
that's
new
kind of the
concept.
the world that we live in. But I have so little tolerance for it because someone's paying you. It's not like we're serving fast food and we're making minimum wage. Like we are paying people really good salaries to do a job for our customers. And if everyone doesn't show up and do their part, we're not going to have any customers for you to be well paid, right? We won't have a company.
Yeah.
So I like literally don't get it. But that's so it's figuring out how to connect with those people and building trust and having honest conversations. It has been a huge piece of how that's worked for me, which is really hard to do at scale, but I found it's the only way to. I got to listen, I got to understand where you're coming from, and I've got to share my point of view, and hopefully we can meet in the middle.
I mean, we have to end here because what a story. Like, how can you top that story? But just know that now I will think of this. I have two sons, and if ever I feel the need to call on their behalf, I will ask myself, like, are they
Don't be
toddlers?
that
Is this the
person.
right
Yeah.
moment? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like, and you know, like, unless this is, yeah, wow.
Yeah, I think the answer is if your kids are 22 years old and you're making
They
phone
have a
calls on their
W
behalf,
2,
yeah, that's
probably a bad
probably
sign.
probably a bad sign.
Oh my God. It's just always a pleasure to chat with you. Thank you so much for bringing your kind of passion, humor, and all of it to this conversation.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you for
Christina.
having me. Thank you for having
You
me.
bet.
I've been waiting my whole life to say this. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, and follow us on LinkedIn because that's the only social media platform where we hang out.